Hello and welcome to another Black Talk Radio News report and commentary. Now, I'm a little bit late with this story. I'm still within the 36-hour time frame of this story coming out. It's not anything that's being reported by the mainstream media, but it is a story or a report about the mainstream media and media figures. And so I don't know how long this particular podcast will be. I'll take as much time as I need. I try to get through, be more concise and get through them a lot faster so that I can do more. As I was telling one of my friends the other day about, I get real busy doing political campaign season. And so I'm just trying to stay on top of these stories and get out as much as possible. So this is a very important story. If you're one of them Bernie Sanders haters, you can exit stage left right now, because I'm about to bring you some truth, and I always try to bring the receipts. I think those who have followed me since I've been broadcasting since 2007 know that I'm not a liar and I'm not a hypocrite, and that you can trust me. And I always tell you to do your own research. All right? So, I want to do this story about Bernie Sanders. The media is really blacking him out. So, I actually got two stories. But I want to first talk about Soledad O'Brien. Y'all remember Soledad O'Brien now. She's not on CNN or MSNBC or with a major network, one of the big six, but I think she is doing public radio, or either she started her own broadcast. I think she's up there in Minnesota, might have started her own media company. I'm not exactly sure, but that's not important. What I want to talk about is her being triggered by a Bernie Sanders political ad that's on social media. Y'all know that there was just a big hearing with Mark Zuckerberg, answering questions about his platform, and one of the topics that was broached was, do y'all fact check political ads? Okay, I could talk about that for about 20-30 minutes, but I'm not going to talk about that. But Soledad O'Brien was triggered by a political ad, so I'm like, well, let me fact check this political ad by Bernie Sanders, and let's see what she's so upset about. Also, she's using psychology here. A lot of psychology is used in the mainstream media. And like Malcolm X said, it's the most powerful entity on the face of the planet. It controls the minds of the masses, and that's power. And so don't think that these people don't know how to manipulate you to get you to think what they want you to think, get you to do what they want you to do. And sadly, it works all too well. Like I mentioned in another video, lie gets halfway around the world before the truth can put his shoes on and lace them up. Okay? And so when you have 6 corporations that are owned by about 18 billionaires collectively, is a statistic I heard thrown out there the other day. That's a lot of power. That's a lot of mind control. Okay, that's why it's called programming. Just like you program a computer to do whatever you want it to do. You have people who write code and write programs and what have you, or you're programming a robot. Well, that's what they're doing. They programming your brain computer. Okay, they're putting information in there, and if it's incorrect information, then the output is going to be incorrect. It's going to lead to a human engaging in incorrect action because it's based off of wrong information or incorrect information. So let me go to BTRcommunity.com, which is a social media network that I created a couple of years ago as an alternative to media. By the way, I don't know if y'all know, Fair Media just published the articles talking about a UK military PSYOP officer has been outed as a executive at Twitter, or I should say a Twitter executive has been outed as a PSYOP officer in the British military. And like Fair Media is pointing out, the mainstream media the networks ain't interested in that story. Okay, so anyway, I digress. Let me get to Soledad O'Brien. As I'm making my post in btrcommunity.com, Soledad O'Brien is using psychology to associate Bernie Sanders' character to that of Trump. You know, I was on Twitter and I used the hashtag fake news. Trump didn't invent fake news or that term. He just popularized it. He didn't invent it. Malcolm X was talking about media controlling the minds of the masses back in the 60s. Controlling it how? With fake news. Okay, so I had a reporter, also out of Minnesota, by the way, or Minneapolis. This person, he follows me on Twitter, and he is a writer for a newspaper up there. And so one day we had a conversation, and he was like, make a long story short, he didn't like me using the term fake news. And just as I explained to you that Malcolm X been talking about fake news since the 60s, I mean, not since the 60s, but when he was around. Okay, so I'm like, Trump didn't invent this term, and he admitted that he's a little bit sensitive to that term because Trump uses it. But just because Trump uses it, and even if he's calling, let's say, some factually correct news fake news, that still doesn't mean that fake news doesn't exist. There's a lot of fake news. So this is actually what got Soledad O'Brien triggered, was this political ad. This is what she said. Fund the potential of another president who hates the media. And I'm a big old critic of the media, but let's end this ugly chapter of media hatred from elected officials who don't like their BS challenge. Now, those are some strong words for attributed to Bernie Sanders. I have never heard Bernie Sanders say he hates the media. Matter of fact, he knows the media hates him, but you know what? His supporters, his campaign has been pushing him to call out the blatant vitriol towards his campaign, the campaign blackout, which I'm going to give you an example of that. Sanders released some big news. This should be on mainstream platforms, but it's not. He released some big news yesterday that's going to get a lot of people out of prison. It's going to expunge a lot of people's records. And the mainstream media is ignoring it. But I'll get to that later in this video. So, what is she upset about? What did Bernie Sanders do, or his campaign do? This came out, it says, I know that says 19 hours ago for those looking at the video podcast, but I actually screenshotted this yesterday. I think the ad came out 48 hours ago. But the ad, tweeted over his official account, says, the corporate media wants you to think our campaign is over. Let me be blunt. I am back and more ready than ever to end the corruption of corporate elites. Now, I actually called out, might have been in the video, might have been in the post, The Rot, y'all may know it as The Root, the online publication that targets African Americans, that's owned by the Mexican-based company Univision, and their political editor, Dr. John Johnson, who is also a professor. I think he's a professor of journalism or literature or something like that. But he's the political editor that Univision hired to be over there at The Root and managing their political section. So it was another woman who wrote the ad. And I think I do recall doing a video about it. It was another writer who wrote the ad about Bernie Sanders having that heart attack. And he interjects in her ad, the political editor, he puts a section in there saying that Bernie Sanders' campaign is done. It's over with. It's done. And I don't mean in no subtle way did he say this. On this post on The Root, he said it was over. This is the end of Bernie Sanders' campaign. That's fake news, okay? It is no other way to call it, but he ain't the only one. And that is what this political ad is talking about. And I'm going to play that for you. Let me pull it up. It's on her, she reposted it to her timeline. So let's open that up, that ad, and we're going to play it so you can hear it. I mean, again, let's fact check this ad. And I'm like, I don't even have to fact check this because he's actually using their own voices, or whoever created the political ad. They're actually using sound bites from the media talking about his campaign. Okay, so what is she upset about? What is she up? But she's a big critic of the media, but she got a problem with his campaign criticizing the media. And I could see if he was putting out some fake news, but he's not putting out fake news. So let's give a listen to this ad. And give it a second, it should be starting.
Sanders is now facing questions over his viability as a presidential candidate.
Now, Senator Bernie Sanders has suspended his campaign. I think it's...
Right, no, of course.
It's over.
He's done. And I was
really?
told that, yeah,
You think he's done?
I think
wow.
he's done.
I'm not too sure if he should actually stay in the race.
I just don't see the idea that he's back. I just don't see how that's possible.
Bernie's back. Bernie's back.
Bernie's back.
Bernie's back, baby.
Bernie is back, yo. Let's do this.
To put it bluntly, I am back.
I was really thrown off by the media and their calls for him to drop out because he had a heart attack. I mean, the guy is doing like a gazillion rallies and campaign events a day, and he's outpacing even the younger politicians. But now that he's back, you know, he's taking care of business.
Too much left to do, and he's probably even healthier now.
I am happy to report to you that I am more than ready, more ready than ever to carry on with you the epic struggle that we face today.
What he says he's going to do, he's going to do it. Nobody else can really trust it because their record shows something else.
Senator Bernie Sanders held the largest campaign rally of the presidential primary season so far.
We need a fighter, not only in this race, but in the broader class war that's been waged against working people in America for many decades now.
And that's what Bernie is showing us, that we can take that political power, we can harness it, and we can change this country, we can change this world.
I am more than ready to take on the greed and corruption of the corporate elite and their apologists.
Bernie's an activist at heart, and the rest of them aren't. He's just an anomaly in politics, period.
I came out to be part of the movement. He's standing for what America really stands for. He's actually going to support working class people, and he's going to make sure that everyone's voice is heard in our society.
I am more than ready to assume the office of President of the United States.
Okay, so we're going to stop it there. So in this campaign ad, I have fact checked it and determined it to be correct, that there is no falsehoods being promoted, that Zuckerberg needs to fact check or anybody else needs to fact check, because I fact checked it. You're using actual comments from talking heads in the media, opinionists and propagandists, declaring this campaign over. And it wasn't just on corporate television, it was on print, it was on social media. Another thing about this rally, because they used footage from the largest political rally to date that any of the Democratic candidates has have, over 25,000 people. Another thing they was trying to do is, again, revive that white Bernie bro narrative, even though polls have shown that 51% of Bernie Sanders supporters, people who say they're going to vote for him, 51% are people of color, black and Latino people. But I saw this guy on there trying to say, oh, look at all, and he's not the only one, but saying all these white people, and what have you. And I told this one white guy, oh, you must be one of those white guys that don't see color. Because I see black people, I see Arab people, I see Puerto Rican people, Hispanic. I see people of color. So they must be invisible to you, because you one of them white people that like to say we don't see any color. Okay? Know what you're doing is, again, smearing this man's campaign to try to make non-white people think that, oh, this is a white campaign. The whitest campaign is Elizabeth Warren's, but you don't never hear anybody making talking points about how white her campaign is, do you? So I don't know what Soledad O'Brien has to be upset about. There's nothing fake there. There's nothing fake there. Okay? Nothing wrong with this ad. You're using sound bites from the actual media. Now, I have some history with Soledad O'Brien. I have some history with her going all the way back to 2015, where I fact-checked Tim Wise. And Soledad O'Brien on Twitter attempted to shield him from my criticism that he said on Facebook, and this post went viral, that I suppose that a white person has the right to yell nigger at people in the streets. Soledad O'Brien agreed with him. Well, I'm a researcher. I love to do research, okay? So I researched case law on that. And I'm like, no, a white person cannot stand in the middle of Times Square and call a black person a nigger or any other kind of racially derogatory term. They can't do that. There's no law. The First Amendment does not cover that type of speech. And it should be simple to understand. I found the case law on that. I think it was Kopinski versus, and it was like in 2015, so I don't remember the exact case. But it was a man who was cussing out a police officer and calling the police officer all kind of vile names, and the police officer arrested him for disturbing the peace, and that was upheld. So you can try to spin it and say, hey, I got a right. White people, I suppose, which suppose mean I don't really know. I didn't really do any research, but I guess that the First Amendment covers racist white people standing in the middle of Times Square or out in public and approaching black people or other non-white people and calling them racially derogatory. I was like, they can be arrested. So you suppose wrong. Do you know Soledad O'Brien came at me hard on Twitter getting this white man's back? Tim Wise, he supposed to be the anti-racist, right? Anti-racist lecturer, a white man talking about white supremacy, and people pay money. He's paid to go talk about racism, and then he's practicing racism and promoting racism by giving white people a license to yell nigger at black people because the First Amendment covers it. I suppose they have a right. Okay, and for those watching the video broadcast of this, you see a white man laid out in the street. That's a white man who got knocked the hell out after he went up to a black couple in New York City and started calling them a nigger and just harassing them. And I wrote in my article, y'all ever heard of the concept that George W. Bush put forth about preemptive strike? That's what I would do. If you're coming up on me, calling me derogatory names, calling me racial, attacking me with terroristic words, calling me a nigger, I'm going to believe, in my mind, I'm going to believe you mean to do me physically bodily harm, and I'm going to strike you before you can strike me because you've already assaulted me with your words. Okay? If you come within and invade my personal space while shouting those words, you're going to get knocked the hell out like this white man did. Because I'm not going to wait for you to pull out your weapon and stab me. I'm not going to wait for you to sucker punch me. I'm going to eliminate the threat. That's what George Bush said that the United States does, right? They have a right to strike first. Preemptive strike to prevent an attack on. And so I laid out a legal argument. I researched it. I linked to the case law. And here comes Soledad O'Brien agreeing with Tim Wise that white people have a First Amendment speech right to yell nigger and terrorize black folks in the street. So I have history with her. That's back in 2015. Now, again, these are members of the media, mainstream media. They get paid a lot. They don't want anybody fact checking them. And they are hostile to Bernie Sanders for the same reason that anybody whose interest is being threatened is afraid of him. Billionaires don't like him because he won't tax them. Okay? And he came out with a plan for repealing the 1996 Telecommunications Act, which I talk about from time to time. The reason I created a nonprofit organization to help teach new media, digital technology, to give people a voice on a platform that isn't on somebody else's platform that can kick them off. Okay, I don't allow anything goes. But the 1996 Telecommunications Act is why we now only have 6 corporations controlling 90% of what we see, hear, and read. 90%, an illusion of choice. So he came out with a media plan. And you can look it up, Bernie Sanders on media ownership in telecommunications. Okay? And this is why the mainstream media hates him. They're billionaire owners, they're corporate bosses, don't want this man elected to office because he's a threat to their business model. He's a threat to their monopoly on controlling the minds of the masses. In this plan, he also talks about funding nonprofit minority-produced media. Funding nonprofit media, minorities, because he knows what's been stolen from us, okay? Through the 1996 Telecommunications Act, which the Republican Congress passed and Bill Clinton signed into law, okay? And Joe Biden supported it. Bernie Sanders voted against the 1996 Telecommunications Act. This is why these media talking heads, opinionists, and propagandists are threatened by this man. Okay, and also in 2016 he was talking about it, as I posted a video clip of Susan Sarandon. I think she was on, what was she on? Let me just play the clip. Matter of fact, let me just give you the sound bite. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but she's on Larry King. I
recently spoke with Academy Award-winning actress Susan Sarandon, who's also well known for her political activism. Her roles in iconic films such as Thelma and Louise, Lorenzo's Oil, and Dead Man Walking, just to name a few, have earned her a top position on Hollywood's so-called A-list of celebrities. She's back on the big screen in a new film, The Meddler, which she stopped by to talk about. But in our conversation, we also covered the 2016 campaign and her headline-making support for Senator Bernie Sanders and her criticism of some of Hillary Clinton's previous policy positions. It was a fascinating interview. Here is some of our conversation.
When did you get so political? Were you a fiery little political kid?
No, the thing was, I was in D.C. in college at the, in the early 70s, end of the 60s, and I mean, in those days, when you turned on the TV, you saw what was going on. It wasn't like it is now. It wasn't corporately owned. Thank you, President Clinton, for getting rid of all the regulations. And so you saw when the South was being integrated. You saw when Vietnam, so you couldn't ignore it. You knew what was happening. And I think that the kids now are better informed because of the internet. But it didn't, have a brain to be against the Vietnam War. And I think that I just held on to it where some other people didn't. But it's always been, I felt an increased sense of responsibility when I became someone who could
voice it.
Well, because most of the people the things that I get involved with are people that don't have a voice, and so I don't tell people what to think or do, but I can give information that people aren't getting. So
why did you choose to endorse my friend Bernie?
Because I think it's a miracle that we have someone who actually has not taken a cent from Big Pharma or Monsanto or fracking or Wall Street, and so the fact that he's been so clean, and then our paths have crossed many times way back when, because he's been that guy. I mean, to have that kind of authentic moral core that is so consistent, and he always speaks out, whether it's a trade agreement or the war, you know, before it's fashionable, gay rights, whatever. And when I was asking questions about going into Iraq, and I really had a hard time with a lot of harassment and death threats and everything, and then he stood up and made that speech, which now, if you look at it, is so clear and so right on and so brave. I just, you know, fell to my knees and was weeping because I had been so isolated and shunned at that time. So that did it. That he had me at that, you know.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it there. So again, she knows what happened, what the 1996 Telecommunications Act did. And then also Sanders wants to protect net neutrality. Okay, that's something I have talked about and always participated in promoting, because like she mentioned, that people today are more informed, and we can argue about that. That's debatable, I should say, because a lot of people use the internet to just distract themselves with entertainment. But then also, when you look at, as I mentioned earlier, how Twitter has running psyops on there, also Zuckerberg again, Facebook, a lot of that information is controlling. They suppress voices, they ban voices. I just did a video with a black activist who was running an anti-racism media page, reaching up to 2 million people a month on Facebook. Robin Jerome Benton, and just kicked off with no explanation. And I also shared that article from 2017 about other black activists complaining, you know. So this is why these people are threatened by Bernie Sanders and why they are doing everything they can to prevent his rise. Now, let's talk about the blackout. Now, I mentioned that Bernie Sanders did something the other day. Okay, look, let me pull this up. I posted it on Facebook, but yesterday at 4:20 p.m. and 4:20 for those who are about cannabis legalization, you know that 4:20 has a symbolic meaning for cannabis legalization. So he introduces this massive plan to end the drug war, to legalize cannabis federally, to also expunge past marijuana convictions, not just in federal prisons, but state prisons as well. And also invest billions of dollars in the communities who are most affected by the war on drugs, which is the black community. Okay, he released this. Let me get to some of the details. Okay, some of the highlights. Let me just pull that up. Let's see here. Let me see if I can reduce my screen size so that those watching the video podcast can see it properly. Okay, let's see. Ensure that revenue from legal marijuana is reinvested in communities hit hardest by the war on drugs, especially African American and other communities of color. With new tax resources from legal marijuana sales, we will create a $20 billion grant program within the Minority Business Development Agency to provide grants to entrepreneurs of color who continue to face discrimination and access to capital. With this revenue, we will also create a $10 billion grant program to focus on businesses that are at least 51% owned or controlled by those in disproportionately impacted areas or individuals who have been arrested arrested for or convicted of marijuana offenses. Provide formerly incarcerated individuals with training and resources needed to start their own businesses and worker-owned businesses, and guarantee jobs and free job training at trade schools and apprenticeship programs related to marijuana businesses. In states like Vermont, Pennsylvania, and Ohio, employee ownership centers promote worker ownership and provide valuable technical support for businesses and workers. We will expand on this success and create employee ownership centers across the country and expand existing organizations. These employee ownership centers will work in coordination with the Minority Business Development Agency grant program to provide the training and technical support needed to formerly incarcerated individuals and people in areas disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs to start worker-owned businesses and cooperatives. Use revenue from marijuana sales to establish a targeted $10 billion USDA grant program, black farmers out there, to help disproportionately impacted areas and individuals who have been arrested for or convicted of marijuana offenses. Start urban and rural farms and urban and rural marijuana growing operations to ensure people impacted by the war on drugs have access to the entire marijuana industry. Have y'all seen this on any mainstream media? And then if you go even to some of the alternative media, as I was just talking about Roland Martin and how I can't support him anymore because he's unethical. And he's corrupt. Now, he promotes marijuana stocks and things of that nature. He's getting paid to advertise that. Why? And I've mentioned before, he hates Bernie Sanders because he feels like Bernie Sanders cost him a job with the Clinton administration. I even made a meme of him buck dancing for Hillary Clinton, okay? And how he got fired from TV One because he gave debate questions to Hillary Clinton. Send it in her email, and he got called out by Jake Tapper for doing so. Okay? But you ain't heard him covering this because he doesn't want Sanders. He don't care about black people. He don't care about black businesses. Here is another section. And give me just a second as sometimes my screen locks up. Ending the war on marijuana and undoing its damage. As President Bernie will legalize marijuana in the first 100 days with executive action by nominating an Attorney General, HHS, Secretary, that's Homeland Security, and administrator for the DEA who will all work to aggressively end the drug war and legalize marijuana. Now, you know, I was very critical of Barack Obama because he could have done this by executive order as well. The DEA is under the executive branch, okay? Immediately issue an executive order that directs the Attorney General to declassify marijuana as a controlled substance. While Congress must aggressively move to end the war on drugs and undo its damage, as President Bernie will not wait for Congress to act, passing legislation to ensure permanent legalization of marijuana, vacate and expunge all past marijuana-related convictions. To my new abolitionists out there, to my prison slavery abolitionists out there, to my prison abolitionists, those who want to see people set free from the plantations of America under new slavery under the 13th Amendment. And these laws set up to fill those plantations up with black bodies, brown bodies, and even poor white bodies. In a Sanders administration, we will review all marijuana convictions, both federal and state, for expungement and resentencing. All past convictions will be expunged. Based on the California model, we will direct federal and state authorities to review current and past marijuana-related convictions for eligibility. This review will include resentencing for all currently incarcerated with marijuana convictions. Following determination of eligibility or status, prosecutors will have 1 year to appeal or object, after which authorities will automatically expunge and vacate past marijuana convictions for all those eligible. Federal funding will be provided to states and cities to partner with organizations that can help develop and operate expungement determination process, much like how California worked with Code for America. Look, Who else got a plan like this out there? I know they probably focus group tested for Elizabeth Warren, since she used to be a professor or whatever at Harvard and whatever. I got a plan for that. I got a plan for this. I got a plan for that. Hey, I just wrote on a piece of napkin, I got a plan, and they fell for it. You know what I'm saying? This woman ain't done nothing but been a copying Bernie Sanders. All right, but I ain't gonna make it about her. But here is a detailed plan to end the drug war, to put billions in the black community, to help people become business owners, provide them with the capital, the training, and everything that they need to succeed. You would think that this would be big news on every major corporation, but particularly on black media. I ain't seeing it. Okay? I'm not seeing it. There's a blackout. And so, since I'm all about them receipts, let's pull up some receipts. Let's go to ABC News Politics Twitter account, because they just recently put something out about Bernie Sanders 2 hours ago. 2020 candidate Senator Bernie Sanders is planning to release his health records by the end of the year. Okay, again, going back to the beginning of this podcast, Soledad O'Brien getting pissed off because Bernie Sanders' campaign in a political ad that was factually correct because it's using actual voices from the media, sampled from the media, declaring his campaign over because of his health scare. Okay? Declaring it over. Look at this. ABC News talking about his health again. Let's go to the beginning. I'm going to show you a 24-hour period because, again, yesterday at 4:20 p.m., this massive plan to end the drug war came out. And to legalize cannabis, set people free, invest billions in impacted communities, give people opportunities, guarantee jobs, worker-owned businesses. This is what they tweet. Let's just scroll down and see if they say anything about his cannabis plan. It's talking about his health records, right? Let's scroll down. We're going to go 24 hours. Nothing. Donald Trump, Beto O'Rourke, Elijah Cummings, Syria. Let's see, impeachment, cruelty to animals. Sanders attends town hall in Marshalltown, Iowa. Must have missed that one earlier. Trump rakes in cash, some Senate Republicans lagging. Keep going. I'm looking for a specific post about his plan to end the drug war. Not seeing anything. We're going to go 24 hours back. There's this is a funny story, man. Let me just stop right here, man. Trump be trolling people, man, and he be making me laugh sometimes. So Biden created this Latino outreach, but forgot to secure the web address and the Twitter handle. When the Trump campaign scooped it up, and both of them up, and then started trolling Biden. Biden, man, I tell you. Let me see, talking about impeachment. Let's see, whistleblower, that's impeachment. Taxpayer-funded speech to attack nasty Democrats. Trump uses. Siding with the Pence talking about pushing China, anti-China propaganda. DEA, and that's 17 hours ago, talking about vaping devices. How you gonna talk about the DEA and not talk about Sanders ending the drug war? Hong Kong protesters. Oh, Lord. Let's see, conservatives rally behind Trump. We're going to go back 24 hours. There's some more impeachment stuff. There's some more serious stuff. Lindsey Graham stuff. More impeachment stuff. Syrian stuff. Lindsey Graham, impeachment. Russia landed heaviest bomber in South Africa in a rare show of military cooperation between the two nations. Let's see. Members of the Congressional Black Caucus, the funeral for Elijah Cummings. Let me see, we're at 19 hours ago. Let me see, Jimmy Carter released from hospital after recent fall. That was like days ago. Northern Ireland police are issuing warning on Brexit. Oh, wow. As Trump said, the whistleblower story again. Border wall with Colorado, Trump talking about. Let me see, Ukraine. Gavin Newsom addresses California wildfires. Democrats pursuing impeachment. Let me see, at 20 hours, Tim Ryan ends presidential campaign. Tim Ryan runs for ends run for president. Pompeo again, man. Tim Ryan ends campaign. Saying some of the same stories over and over and over and over. Let me see, Turkey, Syria. Tim Ryan ends 2020 campaign. How many damn stories they need to do about that? While Trump racing cash, some Republicans lagging. Israelis destroying 140 Palestinian homes. Let me see. Elijah Cummings. Chuck Schumer. Elijah Cummings. Mitch McConnell, Elijah Cummings, Emmanuel Elijah Cummings. Again, another story, another repeat. Trump campaign scoops up Biden's Latino voter web address, trolls his voter outreach. Wow. Okay. Still going back 24 hours, keep going. Let me speed it up a little bit. UN climate fund struggles to meet goal. Elijah Cummings, FDA pushes for stronger warnings about breast implants. Federal judge directs State Department to begin delivering documents related to administration's interaction with Giuliani. The impeachment. One of the most surreal nights of my life at a beauty parlor. I told Chechen police I was gay. More Elijah McCummings news. Am I at 24 hours? Oh yeah, I'm over 24 hours now. Let me just keep going. Nothing about Bernie Sanders' plan, but we hearing about his health, right? Massive plan to end the drug war, expunge records, invest billions in the black community, and ABC News Politics doesn't think that this transformative legislation bears covering, okay? So the Bernie blackout is real, y'all. And as I just, when talking about him threatening to break up the big media, we hear people talking about breaking up the big banks. He's talking about breaking up the big media as well. Okay? So, what we are going to have to do, if we want to see these policies become real, then that means we got to get Bernie Sanders elected. That means we got our work cut out for us. That means we need more volunteers to go canvass communities, to knock on doors, for us to talk to our family members and show them this information and explain to them that this may be our last chance. Okay? This may be our last chance. He's not getting the media coverage, so we got to be the media for him. Okay? So, this is why all of these media personalities get triggered. See, he's threatening their class status, because it is about class just as much as people say it's about race. It's about classism as well. And these black people, non-white people, they don't really care about the poor and the working class black people. They don't. All they care about is maintaining their class status, to keep collecting them checks from the big media six. Okay? So I don't see any other thing that I need to cover on this. I think I've made my point, and I made it well, and I provided the receipts. So, if you think that we need to keep producing our own media, if you want to elevate our voice, then we need you to make a tax-deductible donation to the nonprofit Black Talk Media Project, of which I am president. Man, the largest budget I ever had in a year is $6,000, but yet we have become the #1 digital radio and podcasting platform in the world. I'm a staff of one. I have other hosts who on the network who I don't charge them anything, okay, to produce this content. I used to, but I don't anymore. Because I was really ready to just get frustrated and shut it down. But I've done a lot with a little bit. And I could do even more if you would invest in our nonprofit. Okay? So you can go to blacktalkradionetwork.com. You'll see the PayPal buttons. You don't have to have a PayPal account to donate. You can also send a check or money order to Black Talk Media Project, P.O. Box 65, Mount Holly, North Carolina, 28120-0065. I'm about it, people. I'm about that change. This ain't no hope for change. We didn't know who Barack Obama was. He came out of nowhere. We heard this great story about he was a community organizer and all this and that, but we saw what we got. Well, I feel like your hope for some change would not be misplaced with this man, because he has a 40-year track record. In the very fact that all these corporations, the big media, is blacking out this information on his campaign, giving you nothing but negative, I ain't gonna say nothing but a lot of negative coverage about him should tell you something. If they are against him, then if you're poor and working class, you should be for him. That said, peace and blessings to all. Be safe behind these enemy lines drawn up by these billionaires in this corrupt society.